I don't know anybody in my life that's picked up a Nintendo Switch, sold it, and then picked it up again. But I've done that like 6 times now. And my Nintendo Switch buying and selling history goes all the way back to 2017 at the launch of this thing. I was working at Target doing the flow team, stocking the shelves first thing in the morning before the store opened up, and I was taking my 15-minute break, as you do. The store opens up and people are flooding in to pick up their, I guess, pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch. It was launch date, just came out, everybody's walking out with one. And at the time, I wasn't really playing a lot of video games. I was playing Holy shit! Call of Duty. That was it. That was the only thing I was really interested in.
Yo, Psycho T, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but go on, bro. Holy.
But I had this thing tingling in the back of my head telling me to do something else. Plus, I just kind of like tech, so I kind of like looking at the new tech that was coming out, right? So despite the fact that I wasn't fully committed to the gaming experience itself on the Switch, I just had to pick one of these things up. It was so interesting. Problem was, they were never in stock. I don't know if you guys remember this, but like around the first, I would say, month that this thing was launched, you couldn't find it in store shelves. People were scalping these things. But as I previously mentioned, I worked at Target where these things were being sold. I just happened to know when a couple were going on the shelf. And maybe I slipped one to the back of the shelf behind the promotional material on the shelf where you couldn't really see it. Long story short, I picked up a Nintendo Switch and it was really cool. This idea of having a portable console in your hands that was from a legit console manufacturer was just fascinating. It was like everything that I had wanted as a kid was coming into a reality. To be able to play console games wherever I wanted, that's pretty cool. I can't remember if it was before or after the time that this was coming out, but there was this thing called the GPD Win. It was basically like a portable computer that was kind of geared towards being a gaming device, but it was just really rough around the edges. This was pre-Steam Deck stuff. So to see something like this come out that was just really polished, and not only that, it had first-party support coming out the gate with games like Zelda Breath of the Wild, it was extremely cool. But as I previously mentioned, I just played Call of Duty. This was also in the infancy of this thing. We didn't have the massive drove of third-party support that we have today. This thing was still kind of having to prove itself. This was just after the release of Wii U. People weren't fully trusting Nintendo and nobody wanted to put their games on their platform at the time. It seemed pretty promising, but we still had to wait on the sales numbers. So because of the fact that there was no Call of Duty or CSGO on my Nintendo Switch, it ended up collecting dust. And me being in my early 20s and not having any money, I decided to sell my Nintendo Switch. You could just pick them up all day, every day on store shelves pretty much. The magic of it was kind of worn off at this point, so I decided, oh well, I had my fun with it. That was until the release of Splatoon 2. Oh, wait a minute. Nintendo's coming out with a competitive multiplayer shooter? I want to get in on this. I think it's also worth mentioning that this was a time period where Nintendo was really wishy-washy about people using gameplay or recording their gameplay at all, which was, I know, really stupid to think about now, but that was definitely something that swayed my opinion back then. If you've never played Splatoon, it's this really fun multiplayer shooter where the goal isn't just to shoot the other enemies, it's to cover the map with as much paint as possible. So you're kind of having this territory war, and whoever gets the most paint on the level is the winner. Not only that, they had a special edition Splatoon 2 Switch coming out with green and pink Joy-Cons, which was really cool. The only way you could really get these Joy-Cons at the specific time of this console's release was to have the console. And again, I wasn't fully committed to getting another Switch at the time, but I was going into Walmart for whatever reason, and you know how you just kind of go and walk through the electronics aisle even though you know there's nothing there you really want to pick up. Well, I looked on the shelf and I saw that Splatoon 2 Switch, and the box art was really cool. I think it came with the game and a carrying case, so I was like, this is really cool. I want to play this right now. It's new, it's hot. I picked up the fucking Switch. And I really liked Splatoon, man. It was really fun. But if you know anything about Nintendo's online functionality, it's just a little lackluster. You couldn't add friends and make parties and party up like you could in games like COD or pretty much any other multiplayer shooter on any platform. I remember wanting to play with my friend Tevin, and the only way we could play was either by session joining each other or by searching for a game at the exact same time, which I think that's what we did. I don't even think you could session join your friends. That's how backward this game was. Also, there was no voice chat at all. I can't remember if this was the time they were doing the voice chat through the app thing. I don't know if that had just started. I think it may have, but nobody wanted to mess with that. The game was fun, but the online experience felt heavily restricted from what I was used to playing, like in games like CSGO and COD. Here's the kicker though. According to when Splatoon 2 came out, I couldn't have sold my other Switch but a few months prior at the most. So from the time I sold my Switch and the time that I picked up the Splatoon Switch had to have been within the span of a few months, unless I just played Splatoon 2 really late, which I don't think was the case. At this point, you can tell I have a little bit of a problem. You guys might also remember that the launch edition Switch, which was also the only easily hackable Switch, fun fact, was criticized heavily for its battery life, and pretty soon after they had updated the Nintendo Switch model to obviously patch this exploit, but they also added a slightly bigger battery in it. I can't remember if the Splatoon 2 Switch was one of those upgraded models, because I feel like that might have been a selling point for me, but I can't exactly remember. If it was, then that's part of the reason I bought this Switch. If it wasn't, then I probably also bought the upgraded battery life Switch too. I can't exactly remember. Anyways, like I was saying, I got tired of Splatoon 2, and I had played some other games like Doom and Skyrim. Those were awesome, but again, after the luster wore off and I wasn't really taking my Switch anywhere, it collected dust, and I was like, okay, Daddy needs some money. Switch number 3 was the Nintendo Switch Lite. I don't even have a good explanation for this one. Nintendo was like, you know what? Some people find the Switch just a little bit bulky, and the only way they play it is portably. So why don't we just cook up a new Switch? One that's a little more portable, doesn't have detachable Joy-Cons, and has no TV dock support. Oh, it also had a D-pad? So I wanted to see what the D-pad felt like. And this is where my dumb consumer brain starts overtaking my rational thinking, because I'm like, oh, this is really cool. A small Switch. It would be really cool to see this portable console even smaller. So I'm at Best Buy one night, like an hour before closing. I see it on the shelf and I'm like, you know what? It's time. It's time to pick one of these up. And you know what, man? I thought it was the coolest damn thing ever. Oh, by the way, to add more insult to my stupidity, you gotta have games to play on your new Nintendo Switch, right? Guess what the main games that I were playing were? Zelda, Mario Kart. When I sold my Nintendo Switch, I sold the games too. So when I bought another Nintendo Switch, I bought the games again. So I've bought Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart at least twice physically. No, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. I think I might have a little bit of a mental illness now that I think about it. Okay, so now we're 3, possibly 4 Nintendo Switches down now. But I have another important piece to the puzzle to mention this to kind of rationalize my thinking here. All right, listen to this one. You remember how I said all I was doing was playing Call of Duty? Well, you know what? I got kind of sick of just playing Call of Duty and Counter-Strike. I wanted to make more out of my channel. I wanted to make evergreen videos that could last the test of time, videos that you could watch a year from now and enjoy. I wanted to cover multiple video game topics. I wanted to do retrospectives and reviews. So I was getting into playing different types of games. So while you're playing these different types of games on different consoles, you got to be able to capture them, right? You can't capture gameplay on a Switch Lite because there's no dock support. I almost want to say that I just captured stuff from the capture button on the Switch Lite and then ported it to the laptop, but I genuinely can't remember. If I did, that sure was something. Obviously, that's not a good long-term solution, so yeah, the Switch Lite was gone. Also, a game that I was really looking forward to actually playing was Animal Crossing. I know that sounds weird, but it was just a series I never touched, and it seemed like something that you could spend a lot of time in and just kind of pick up and play whenever. That seemed really fun. So fast forward to 2020, a year after the Switch Lite comes out, or less than a year, and we all know how 2020 went, but I don't think Nintendo knew how 2020 was going to go for them, because my god, Animal Crossing exploded. Everybody was playing this game. Everybody was talking about this game. Everybody's stuck inside doing nothing. They're playing Animal Crossing. People that probably hadn't ever played a video game ever, or maybe at least in the last decade, were picking up Switches to play Animal Crossing. And I'm sure that they killed the Switch Lite sales around this time, because there were just people that wanted to play Animal Crossing. They wanted the cheapest way to get into it. The Switch Lite was $100 cheaper than the regular Switch. Duh, it's a no-brainer, right? But despite the fact that the Switch Lite was probably a really big Animal Crossing seller, Nintendo was like, you know what, we're gonna make an Animal Crossing Nintendo Switch. Oh, and you know that I just can't resist that great packaging. I thought the Animal Crossing Nintendo Switch Lite just looked, fantastic. I wanted to pick the game up anyways, but I didn't have a Switch, so what would be the perfect time to get a special edition Nintendo Switch? One problem though, these things were being scalped left and right. You couldn't pre-order them. You couldn't just go and pick them up in stores, but Exeat could. He just happened to come across one in a store, and he was like, hey, I know you've been looking for this. You want me to just send you one? And I was like, well, great. Now I gotta spend the money. I literally have no option now. What am I gonna do? Say no to getting this rare Switch Switch at the time that nobody else could get. Of course, as luck would have it, like a year later, they just printed the hell out of these things, but that's besides the point. I got it, put a metric ton of time into Animal Crossing, enjoyed every bit of it. It was fantastic, and this was a Switch I planned on keeping for a really long while. I did keep this one for a long time. I enjoyed it, I played it, and I had no intention of selling it. But when it started to get to the point where I wasn't playing my Switch as much, the Animal Crossing hype died down, and you could pick the Animal Crossing Switch up at every single store that you go into, Walmart, Target, whatever. I was like, well, you know what? If I decide that I want another one, I guess I could get another one. This one hurt to sell because this one was kind of personal to me, but again, I needed money, more so than I needed something just sitting on a shelf collecting dust. So I decided to sell it to somebody who would get more use out of it than me. That was the end of that. Until Tears of the Kingdom. Listen, I didn't care about Zelda one iota, alright? I figured this is just Breath of the Wild 2. I don't care. I'm not buying another Nintendo Switch for one game. But you know what? Maybe there was just this thing that happened where you could preview the game a couple weeks early, and I was like, whoa, this game is actually really, really good, and it would be really cool to experience this on the Switch when it comes out day one. But listen, here's the kicker. I didn't buy this one. Yeah, I know, that's crazy to believe at this point. I was just scrolling Facebook looking for Nintendo Switches. I thought, okay, maybe I'll come across one that's just cheap or whatever. This dude had one in the box ready to go. He was looking to trade it. And this is where I traded something that I will probably never be able to come across in my life again. And this is, you know, I don't really know how I feel about this one. I haven't really talked to anybody about this, and I haven't really mentioned this on camera or online ever. About a year ago, I had a family friend through my fiance that had a lot of retro gaming stuff just sitting in a closet somewhere. She was like, I don't know what to do with this. I just want to get rid of it. Here you go. I got an NES, a ton of NES games, a Game Boy Color, a ton of Game Boy Color games, a few like manuals and strategy guides and stuff. But the one item that was absolutely mind-blowing to me was a boxed Nintendo 64. This was the Donkey Kong edition. It was a jungle green one. It came with the expansion pack in the game, which were missing from the box, but the Nintendo 64 wasn't missing from the box. It still had the Nintendo 64 in the controller in the plastic wrap, and the controller looked like it was never used its entire life. It was perfect. All the buttons were immaculate. The analog stick was perfect. This console literally looked like they just bought this bundle, took the game out, and then put the console in storage. So I essentially had on my hands a brand new Nintendo 64. But you know, I'm not much of a video game collector. I've had a lot of cool consoles that I mainly just use for game capture because I want to experience them like you would when you bought the console. Recently, I sold my backwards compatible PS3. I sold my slim PS3, sold my Xbox 360. All of my consoles and all of my games pretty much for the most part are gone besides my PS5 and my Switch. So yeah, I traded a bunch of retro stuff that was probably irreplaceable for a Nintendo Switch. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. So I'll be able to play Tears of the Kingdom day one. And then I never made a Tears of the Kingdom video. So that was kind of funny. So now it's kind of funny that I ended up with the Switch OLED, which is a nice refined version of the Switch. And I didn't originally plan on getting it, but now it's kind of cool to have it. I'm also in this weird position where I'm kind of enjoying the Switch again like it's brand new. The library and the ecosystem for the Switch today is different than it was even just 3 years ago. There's so much content on the Switch to enjoy. There's literally a game for everybody on there. You want old school RPGs? There's literally every classic Final Fantasy on there. There's Star Ocean, there's Octopath Traveler. You want first person shooters? You got Doom, you got Borderlands, you got Quake. You do got Quake. You got the first two Metro titles on here, which I've been wanting to get into, but I haven't yet. And you got the entire BioShock collection on here. Fantastic, amazing games that you can just get on the eShop right now for like $10. That's another thing. A lot of the games on the eShop are just constantly going on sale for dirt cheap. You can pick up all these classic games for under $20. It's ridiculous, which is so weird, man, because I'm such a proponent of physical media. If I have a console, I want to buy physical games for it so I have the ability to sell them if I want. But man, when you can pick up a game for under $10, it's just a no-brainer. When you got games like Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate Edition for $8, it's kind of hard to pass up. I don't know what it is about Nintendo and the way they suck me into their first-party games, even if I'm not totally into them. I kind of know what a Pikmin is now. Animal Crossing was obviously a banger. Tears of the Kingdom, incredible game, and when I picked that up, I also picked up the Metroid Prime remaster because I really wanted to see what they did with that. It's still sealed. I haven't gotten into it yet. In conclusion, I guess I would just end this by saying that the Switch is just a really good value proposition overall, which is really interesting to say because this is supposedly getting to the end of its life. You know, this thing wasn't very powerful when it came out in 2017, and that's showing to be even more apparent in 2023. But even with that, you got this enormous library of games with every genre in them. Like, Switch players are eating good. You can play so much on this. It's just incredible. And then you also double it with the fact that you can take it portably wherever you want. You know, if you were just picking up a console for the first time and you were like, I could pick up a PlayStation or an Xbox, but I'm not really sure what I'm gonna like on that. Or I could pick up a Nintendo Switch where I know I'm gonna get quality Nintendo games, but I can also play all of these other third-party titles. I can play remasters of games that I played 10, 20 years ago. It's kind of a no-brainer, man. I think the Switch is a pretty cool console, and I also think I'm a psychopath for buying a ton of these. I'll let you rate my medical condition in the comments and tell me what you think of the Nintendo Switch, but I just wanted to have a little therapy session with you guys, go down memory lane, and talk about my history with the Switch, because it's been a really cool console, it's been a hell of a ride, and it's gonna be really interesting to see what they do next.